everybody, Steve here, and we're going to do another video, and this one is the first road test with the booster in the truck, and wasn't really paying attention to details, so I'm just kind of chalking this up, as the title says. It's a first road/heat test because it kind of checked my brain at the door. But anyway, instead of trying to explain it all, let's go check out the video. So I've been driving for 3 hours. I just want to take a look at the inside. There's the cell, and there's the other little bubbler that I have, and it's okay. It's a little warm, but I tell you, this fuel transmission line, 1/4 inch, 50 psi. That's some good stuff. And again, it's hot, but so is pretty much everything else underneath the. Here's an interesting thing, is that if you look, see how that's moving? Let me see if I can steady this so you can see it. That is how hot, I mean, the actual, that post is actually moving. See that? And this thing was all tightened up before I left, so I mean, obviously the cell got really hot. I mean, so much so that you can see deep in there. See how that post where the washer is kind of sunk in, and again we kind of see the same thing on this side there. So obviously this thing got really hot. Cool thing is, the rest of it, as you can see, there's the fuel gauge, or the water level, and how it's right there. And when I started out, it was up at this fill line, because that's the fill line for when the cell is in there and has 2 liters of water. So I went from here down to here in 3 hours, down to that point right there. So that's going to be interesting. I'll eventually take this cell out, find out how much water that used, how much water it used within the 3 hours. I really like this fuel line here, 1/4 inch fuel line, because it gets hot, but it doesn't get as hot as like this tubing. And notice how that tubing has gotten kind of gotten real faded, hazy look to it. And I think that's because of the heat. So, but everything else looks pretty good. So anyway, yeah, the heat seems to be a problem. Well, brass fittings are hot, so I guess I better change that out, just like Steve and the install guys recommended, and Dan and 1 or 2 others. But again, that look at that. I mean, that connector right there is loose, and it was really tight when I started out. So obviously I have to put another lock washer to keep those tight. Because look at that, it could have sparked out. So again, it was running good. The amp gauge started out cold at about 10 amps, and the hottest it got was in between the 10 and the 20 mark. So I'm figuring about 15 to maybe 17 amps. And then the volts, it was pretty good. And I had a little cheapy plug-in thing there to check the status of the vehicle, and it was doing real well, and it says 12.9. So obviously the battery is doing good. Other than that, everything else went well, except for obviously the extreme heat. So looking at possibly doing a reservoir type of thing and refill, get some more water in there. So that's it. So anyway, so that's it. That was the road/heat test. Actually got renamed to be a heat test for the fact that I checked my brain at the door and kind of set it up on the shelf and just went driving around for 3 hours without paying attention to the details, like what kind of water did I use. And again, I used tap water instead of distilled water, so I got to change that. See some other things. I got it on paper here because, again, I'm not that smart. Going to use some lock washers and compression washers for the contacts, for the positive and negative contacts. So those won't loosen up and possibly spark out. Again, safety. Let's see what else. I'm going to put that air temperature sensor that was in the air intake that goes into the fuel injection or the carburetor, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put that back in there because that is a huge variable, and sealing it off, I don't think that was a good idea to do for right now. Anyway, again, as I stated, I just want to do a basic test with a basic engine, basic cell, throw the stuff in there and see if there's any improvements and go from there. So I kind of put my foot in my mouth and or screwed the pooch, or I don't know, whatever little saying you want to say. I wasn't thinking when I did it. So no more brass fittings. Going to get the nylon fittings going from the top of the cell for the gas output. Either that or that NIR or polypropylene fittings that are real high heat resistant. The other thing I want to do was to take, if you remember the clear tubing that went from the top of the cell and the gas output that went into the bubbler, it was extremely hazy and opaque, and it really changed color. And about halfway through the trip I stopped to check the system out, and again that clear tubing was like super hot. And even though it's sitting in front of the radiator, again I think I'm going to make some changes, use some of that 1/4 inch fuel line hose, or it's 6.2 millimeters, whatever that is, and use that to go from the top of the cell and run that to the bubbler, because I think that'll help a lot too. And again, we're still working on the bubbler system, so eventually, want to give a shout out to Steve from Install Guys. Thanks, got your message, and yeah, you got some good points there, and I'll send you a message back. So anyway, that's I'm calling this a road/heat test, because that's about the only thing I know for sure that yeah, the cell got hot, and need to do something to mitigate the heat. So, and again, it was pretty hot today. It was about 95, 98 degrees out on the road, so it was a real hot day today, and again with the engine compartment. So I'm thinking about, if you notice the cells or the systems that have like the EBN ink dry cells that have the reservoirs, or the SID cell where it has the reservoirs to keep the cell submerged and at a proper level, and that would also help in cooling and recirculate the electrolyte. I think that is an outstanding idea. This bubbler is good just for the fact that you have a dual bubbler in one place, but again, there's still lots more long-term testing that needs to be done. But otherwise, that's about it. So it was kind of cool. I was kind of wondering what was going to happen, and again, it's just trial and error and see what happens. And I'm just glad the error didn't result in blowing up the cell or my truck, or melting, meltdown, and all kinds of neat stuff. That would be kind of low. So anyway, that's it, and just thought you wanted to take a look at it and see some of the gross errors that I did on this road test, and something to think about. So when you guys do your first road test, you won't have to go through and kind of do this and call it just a heat test. So anyway, hey, take care. God bless. Peace.